Okay, gonna try to do this in one take. This is a reply to Zomagedits Chris's latest video, Belief, Knowledge, and Agnosticism, which was itself a reply to the video by Bionic Dance, You Are Too an Agnostic Atheist, which was itself a reply to a prior video by Chris. And that's as far back as it goes. No, really. Chris, I want you to know that I have thumbed up your video, and I'm a long-time subscriber and fan of yours, but nonetheless, I have to take issue with a number of your conclusions. First, if indeed Plato defined knowledge as a justified true belief, this does nothing to undermine the point that knowledge and belief are fundamentally different things. A given belief can gradually make the transition from being completely unsupported to being supported so well as to be called knowledge, something known. But this does not mean that it stops being a belief, something believed. This is not a continuum. A thing can be both believed and known, or believed without being known, because belief and knowledge are different things. They can come together, or separately. Second, you say that definitions change over time and words change their meanings. This may be true as a tendency, but not as a rule. Chris, you may recall in the comments on your original video, I objected to the act of basing definitions on general use, because such leaves them beholden to the underhanded machinations of a good publicist. The believers outnumber us by a significant margin, so if they set their minds to it, it would be a very simple matter for them to use the term atheist much more often than we do. Does this mean that they get to decide what the term means? Do they get to tell us who we are? I once took a class in early civilizations, and one evening, for homework, we read a chapter that included the beginnings of Buddhism. The next day I brought up in class an objection I had to the book's description. The book said, there are two main denominations of Buddhism, Mahayana, which means the great vessel, and Hinayana, which means the lesser vessel. Now, I have never been a Buddhist, and I don't know if I have ever known any, but one day I had gotten curious about Buddhism, and I hit the encyclopedia. The two main denominations, emphasis on the main part, are Mahayana, which does indeed mean the great vessel, and the older of the two, Theravada, which means the way of the elders. Hinayana, the lesser vessel, is a derogatory term which Mahayans use to refer to Theravada. Now, what if the Mahayans outnumber the Theravadins by a significant majority? Such would put them in a position to use the term Theravada much more often. Do they then get to dictate what the word Theravada means just by using it more often? What if we leave a definition, even in the purely colloquial sense, completely beholden to popular usage? The definition of a term is the concept it refers to, isn't it? So if it stops referring to that particular concept, does this mean that the concept stops existing? Of course not. So if the term atheism stops referring to simple lack of God beliefs, just because this stops being the popular use of it, the concept will remain. What term do you propose we anchor that concept to? You say that once a definition makes it into the dictionary, that makes it legit. Well, okay, let's look at a dictionary. How does the dictionary define A? As absence. How does it define Gnosticism? As knowledge. How does it define A? As absence. How does it define theism? God belief. So if A means absence, and Gnosticism means knowledge, then agnosticism means absence of knowledge, and if A means absence and theism means belief, then atheism means absence of belief. After all, such is how these prefixes and root words are in the dictionary, and that makes them legit, right? And finally, I think this is my final point. You talk about agnosticism, it being undescriptive of one's views, so why use it as a label? Now perhaps I have misunderstood, perhaps I have quote-mined you here, and if so, I'm sorry about that. But I believe this is a point Bionic Dance was making. Given that the term agnostic doesn't actually say anything about what views one holds or does not hold, it is not an alternative between theism or atheism, each of which is descriptive in this way. And fifth, I think it's fifth, I've kind of lost count at this point. If we need an alternative between theism and atheism, do we also need one between Gnosticism and agnosticism? And sixth, you talk about a period in your life which you seem to hold as your agnostic period, if I take you right, in which you had some days that were more theistic and other days that were less theistic. Days in which you see yourself in retrospect as a believer, and days in which you see yourself in retrospect as not a believer. Now, not knowing whether you officially had a certain view or not does not establish that you neither had it nor lacked it. You may have had some difficulty sorting out which was the case, but nonetheless, one of the two was. Maybe some days were theistic and others were atheistic, and you were not sure which were which, and they kind of ran together for that period. You were close to the line, but nonetheless that line was there. This hardly necessitates a blanket term for both. And finally, you say that my ass is agnostic. Well, as a matter of fact, it is. Having no knowledge of any sort, it can have no God knowledge.